There we go. What now? And for this very hot summer, European summer at least, we go on with one very hot topic, and that is guilt. Which is a very, very, very common state of being for parents all over the world. Um, and so, actually, I know I just kind of very often start with the definition or just to make sure that we're on the same page. But what we mean with guilt is a sense of culpability or remorse for having done something wrong. That also turns into for being something wrong very easily. Um, and actually, I was looking at guilt, and as with all this topic, I'm always just like seeing the different nuance of it as it applies to us as kids or parents or to our parents in the relationship that we have with our parents. And one thing that was very interesting for me is that I don't see guilt applicable in the universe of children. Like, most often than not, guilt is a learned behavior. So, and I was just looking at how, like, when you're like the operating status of a kid is the one of learning. So, and I love, there is one quote of Gary Douglas that says, mistake is part of the creation. And I loved it because I always thought that mistake was one element of creation, like one ingredient, like almost, I don't know if the secret ingredient, but like a very crucial ingredient. And I see how with children, mistake is just getting clarity on one way that doesn't work. So yeah, I don't know, I learned to play a game with my brother, and then I throw a tantrum and throw the game on the floor, and then my brother's like, no, I'm not playing with you anymore. Okay, cool. It's not that doesn't mean that I am a horrible child. It just means that I tried something, it hasn't worked, it's not turning out the way I'd like it to be. Next. And rather than feel guilty, it's just one way that doesn't work. And we get clarity on that, and we can move on and move over. Um, but in the word of adults, oh gosh, guilty of something. Welcome to the club. We have the t-shirts. It's almost state of being that we feel like we're surrounded by so many experts in so many fields, um, that it's almost impossible to not be wrong or to not, it's very easy to fall into the trap of I lack, I could have done better, I could have done faster, I could have done different. um, I am preparing a series of video, and I was looking at the different types of parenting, and it was very interesting. And I've been homeschooling my kids for the past 3 years, so I've been looking at different, like, when entering this very judgeable word, I was looking at, like, so what does homeschool look like, what, how do you approach it, like how. And I was looking at many different nuance of it, and it was so interesting to see how the underlying point of view was defending and proving how one was better than the other. um, and that's a bit, I mean, hopefully it's not the job of all influencers, but it is a bit of a part of the job of the influencers and communication in social media. So if you're, I don't know, vegan, you advocate for that being the best, which, nothing against it, but like, there's not many, there's not much space for what will work here. It's more of the polarity of right and wrong. So what potency are you avoiding with the guilt you're choosing? Everything that is. And everywhere we keep ourselves trapped in the loop of not being or doing enough. What would it what would it be like to just like throw it away and just start looking at like acknowledging? And one thing that guilt brings with itself very strongly is judgment. And it taps into one of our deepest, most radicated, rooted fears of not being enough or not doing enough. So it's quite easy to buy into that, like, oh God, I'm guilty, and judge yourself. And one of the antidotes of guilt is gratitude, because gratitude and judgment cannot coexist. And like, I know that like creative of all sorts, when they have a bit of an inspiration block, they have the tendency to write a gratitude journal for like 21 days. You write, I don't know, 3 to 5 things you're grateful for. And you just kind of like start your engines again. You just like get the juices flowing about like being grateful. And actually it's very interesting because when you have a task, when you give yourself a task, your brain start to look for those cues in the world around you. So you just start building up neuronal patterns in your brain that you didn't had previously. You just have new roads in the brain that gets excavated, and you just have more possibilities. Um, and the thing is, we can have gratitude for what we do, and we can have gratitude for who we be, which is a little bit stronger. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to begin. I know. Um, but just think about what would it have been for you as a child to have the energy of gratitude and acknowledgement as a familiar energy rather than the energy of judgment and guilt. And I don't know, and I'm actually very interested on your feedback and what you know and what you like know about this. But I think that guilt is really something that we do not come with on this planet in a way, but we learn to, we start like faking it till we make it, and then we kind of start to own it. I don't know, maybe it's one of the elements that we buy as element of adulthood. Not necessarily a functional one, but still. So what would it be like rather than be familiar with such dysfunctional energy, we started to train ourselves with gratitude, kindness toward ourselves. And it might be a complete like rewriting of a pattern. And what would that be like? How would that have been like for you as a kid to live in an environment where rather than actually judging yourself, your parents were like, oh, okay, I screwed it up. Next. How does it get even better? I'm rocking at so many things. And what else can I be and do different? Like, live from a sense of lightness and possibility rather than judgment and the curse of judgment that you are wrong and you will forever be wrong. So everything that brings up, brings down, brings up and down. Can we destroy it and create that right and wrong, good and bad, pot and buckle, nine shorts, boys, proverbs, and beyond? And I do not have much of an agenda with this conversation, so which I kind of don't for any conversation, but I'm interested in how I mean, I know you guys are translating and I don't see the people on Facebook really, sorry. But like I am interested, what do you know about guilt, and how has it been for you growing up? Like, was it a familiar energy? Is it a familiar energy for you in parenting if you do have child? I'm curious.
Yeah, totally. Like the guilt has always been the, how can I say, the signal that you were on the right path, actually. Because,
Really?
yeah, because if you're like, if you were feeling guilty, then you were judging yourself, and then that meant that you were like understanding what was good or not good in a way.
Oh, wow. So it was a way to keep you on track,
Yeah,
like a thermometer of the
yeah,
situation?
exactly. And and I'll translate. Otherwise, I forget.
Sure, please do. So everywhere we use guilt as the eternal jailer to not screw it up. Everywhere we keep guilt as a crucial element in our relationships to make sure we don't go too much overboard, that we're not too different, too annoying, too infinite, too whatever. Can we destroy and uncreate that? Good and wrong, good and bad, pot and pockle, nine shorts, boys, poets, and beyond. You know, one funny thing, and it's interesting, thank you for bringing it up, Joy. I think that, I mean, the relationship with our parents, being biological parents or, the figures that we grow up with, is actually one of the first relationships that we nurture into existence, that we're invited to by the adults in our life, and then that we spend more time and that we exercise with the most. Because I mean, I think we all had the experience of, I don't know, being disrespectful to our parents, and our parents be like, hey, nobody treat me like this, stop it, or whatever, just like, or positive reinforcement, like, oh my gosh, thank you, that was such a great, I don't know, comment or action, and they were accompanying us in having our reality with relationship, and also giving us the elements of this reality to make us functional in a way. So everywhere we picked up on our parents' guilt, and we took it as true. Can we just like return it to sender with a lot of consciousness attached, and just like stop carrying this burden just because it's kind of a like a heritage, a legacy that we need to carry on, and just like return it to sender with a lot of consciousness attached? And who would you be without guilt? Everything that is raw. Can we destroy and create that? Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and buckle, nine shorts, boys, poets, and beyonds. And everywhere it's a necessary ingredient in all relationships. What else is possible there that tickles into existence the gratitude and acknowledgement that is possible, rather than the necessity of judgment and the deterioration of judgment and the lesser version of judgment? So everything that is, oh my gosh, the heaviness, right and wrong, good and bad, what a bottle, like yours, boys, poets, and beyond. Um, if it was not guilt, what could that be? And sometime, and there was a beautiful, beautiful call that Gary and Dane did, a class actually, and it was called "Losing the Ache of Dissatisfaction." It was like in Paris, 2015, like ages ago, and I loved it because dissatisfaction could both go in the direction of I'm not being or doing enough, or I know that there is more possible. So, like, be thirsty for more, and that's where the possibility comes in, or judge yourself for not enough. So, what possibility and what capacities lie underneath the guilt that you've been bastardizing with guilt. Everything that is right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pot, online shorts, boys, poets, and beyonds. What if you just know that there is more possible? But the thing is, the guilt keeps us. It's like when you play chess, it's like checkmate. When when you cannot do any more moves, checkmate, it's like the game is over. Guilt is the checkmate to the future possibilities because guilt is a conclusion and a definition and a judgment of us that doesn't allow us to ask for more, explore more, get out of the pit of wrongness that we dig ourselves and go into the next adventure and allow ourselves not to be defined by our mistakes, but rather be grateful and be like, oh my gosh, I found one way that doesn't work. Awesome, that's out of the way. I had this conversation with a dear friend the other day, and she was telling me how some of the relationship of her daughter were quite intense and not necessarily functional and quite outlawish actually too. So perfectly legal in many senses. And we were looking at how great that she's having them now, that she's young, and she knows that she has so many resources and strengths, and it's not happening when she's like, I don't know, later in life in a situation where she's maybe, I don't know, married with kids and, I don't know, sharing a home with someone, but she's just having them now. So one of the things that I kind of put there as a possibility is, what if now, like, one question of access consciousness is, what's right about this that I'm not getting? What if when you could feel guilty, rather than feeling guilty and going down that road, which you know where it leads to judgment town, and you've been there before, it's not a pretty town. um, you could like receive the gift and the possibility that this is, and how screwing up now is possibly a very precious lesson for not doing that same, using the same dynamics and using the same energy later in life, when where maybe the stakes are even higher than now. And one thing, I know we're also kind of closing, we're almost at the end of our conversation, but one of the things that I love that access consciousness reminds us constantly is that the universe never gives us anything that we cannot handle. So if there is a challenge, what's right about this I'm not getting? What's right about me I'm not getting? And if it was not guilt, what would that be? What do I know is possible that nobody else knows is possible? That if I knew it, that if I claimed it, would change all realities with total ease. Our 30, our 20 minutes are done, but I don't know. I hope this kind of food for thoughts conversation was thought inspiring. Um, I'm loving to delve into this all this different conversation. And the last, like next weekend, next Monday, it's our last Monday. Up with education. Dun, da, 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 because I mean, in the States, it's already back to school, but in Italy, not. So there's going to be the whole school chapter starting, and we have an intro coming up the September 11th night. We're going to do introductory class of conscious parent, conscious kids, with a little manual and all of your questions. But actually, I'm super grateful that we just started to bring up so many topics, and summer is a bit of a dormant moment for parenting because they're like summer camps, and there's so many ways to, I don't know, have the kids in a way out of the way. But it's also a chance for us to just start shopping for new energies to, add to our lives. So